themselves the hydration benefits as well as the energetic benefits of the water. So we haven't built a new machine. We certainly have the capability of making the water incredibly more powerful than it is right now. Kevin, as a matter of fact, had an experience with us a while back where I amped up the power of the machine that I was using, and he immediately went into, this was before it was offered to you guys, he immediately went into a detox state for a day or so, and then came back out of it again because the water was so much more powerful. It kicked a bunch more detox things out. Now, as far as the overall signature, I would say, of what's going on, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish a two-pronged effect. One, obviously the distance energy is the mental, emotional, spiritual. The water cannot touch that. It cannot reach that area. The distance energy has a tremendous long-term effect for positiveness, spiritual clearing, and spiritual ascension, and that has not changed. However, there are certain things that are picked up in the physical plane that cause you to be tired and that cause your body to work less than optimally. The water does affect that. So what we're doing now is we're hitting the physical plane, in other words, length, width, height, and time, and to a certain extent the fifth and sixth dimensional space, although those are more affected by the distance energy. And then we're also hitting the close-in stuff as well. What this does is it produces a completely optimized signature that allows you to be cleared in both things, not only your etheric body out infinitely, because that's how far it goes, but also your physical body inwardly, because that also goes in infinitely. There's an old alchemical term which says whatever is above is below. What that means is you can analogize any size set of parameters that you want to, and you will find an equal set of parameters in the micro sense as well as the macro sense. So just like you look at the universe as an example, you can look at an atom. The analogy is you have the sun in the center of the universe, you have the planets floating around, and as they rotate back and forth, they produce an energy system. Same thing, of course, happens with an atom. You have the protons and various other subatomic particles that make up the protons and so forth inside, which is an energy system, and then you have electrons rotating around it. Each one of these things are made up of the same thing. They're made up of an etheric substance called tachyons, which are incredibly small, 10 to the minus 80th meters. And so therefore you have an infinitely small universe and an infinitely large universe. And what that enables you to do is attack each one of these things. By looking at one thing, you can attack the next thing. By looking at one thing, you can go subatomic and attack the next thing by analogy. What this allows us to do is it allows us to simply, by perceiving what should be done, to make it done in hyperdimensional space by the machines. So, for instance, I don't have to actually have necessarily, I may have, but I don't have to have, an actual substance. For instance, I'm not interested in getting let's take glutathione, let's use neon as an example. I don't use neon on the machine, an actual neon, because it's a waste of time. I have to go get the neon, all the rest. I simply say neon, and the water automatically picks up the signature of neon and places it in the water. All the things that are necessary about neon for you to ingest. Why? How can you ingest something that cannot react? How do I know? I don't care. All I know is there's an effect. It's a positive effect, so I use it. There's some kind of energetic effect that neon produces in the water that has benefit for you. It's up to me to make sure that that benefit is positive in all ways, and I make sure that's the case by making sure I'm drinking and on the same stuff that you guys all are. And I'm also testing it on myself with another machine before you ever see it. So what we're doing essentially is by using the power of human thought and human imagination and journeying through the clearing process of that thought as negativity allows more and more potential possibilities to happen and more concepts to be intuitively opened, we're able to take those, verbalize it through language or symbols, symbology or whatever, and actually produce a signature in water and ether space. And the most amazing thing, the most fantastic thing about this is you can actually create these things, and the efficacy is beyond belief. Because while other people are trying to fool around with gizmos and various things like that, we don't fool around with gizmos. We fool around purely with concepts. And we challenge anyone, and we have no problem with being beaten, but so far we haven't been, but we challenge anyone to have a better imagination and a more perceptive look at reality than we have. Now, how are they going to do it? They have to be on a machine that clears as rapidly and as powerfully as ours do. But how can they be on a machine that clears as rapidly and as powerfully as ours does when they don't have machines that go to infinity like ours do? Or not to say, let's not say infinity, but close enough to where you don't have to worry about the difference. They don't have those things. So therefore, by definition, they can't have the perception that we have. So what we do is we continue to journey through ether space. We continue to journey through the portals that we're opening by clearing negativity and by putting those things that we find to allow ourselves to journey even more rapidly into ether space and clear more portals so that it becomes a self-empowering feedback loop that allows us to continue to move more and more exponentially rapidly into the ascension process. Will we ever reach, the situation where we're divinity? Of course not. Divinity is infinite. We will always be toadstools, but at least we can be far better than what we are. So what Kevin and I are really trying to do is introduce infinity to the rest of the world. Infinity that they've never even imagined before, a lifestyle and a way of looking at things that they've never could even conceive existed. And we believe that this situation will get more and more advanced, more and more blissful, and more efficacious as time goes along. Kevin, anything on that? Kevin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just said
any comments?
No, that sounded pretty good to me. I don't really have anything to add on top of that. All I know is from my experience, I go by my experiences, and so when Bill makes these statements, initially when I started working with him, or even before, I took it with a grain of salt because I hadn't experienced some of these states, and so now it's almost been a year for me, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. You said that like 6 months ago, and now I'm starting to see it and feel it, and so it's like, you have to ride the process yourself, and so, like if you think some of these things he's saying are a little far out, just put it on the shelf and leave it on, just sit there and have an open mind and just walk through it. And, it seems like everyone that stays around long enough starts to experience the same phenomena consistently. So, as you rise up in frequency, you seem to experience the same states of being, the same states of consciousness. You sort of act the same way. You think the same way. These are all planes of existence. And when you're at that certain plane, certain things happen. It's just like an elevator. You get off at a different floor, and there's a different thing that you look out at, and you experience different smells, different ways of looking and reacting at the world. And, this thing called unity consciousness, you take duality, and now you're in unity or polarity, and now you become archetypal in nature. You become a true individual. A true individual it thinks for himself. The process of ascension is becoming self-individualized. You're part closer to God. God's an individual. The concept of God to me is someone that can react spontaneously, enjoys life, is able to delve into the whole range of frequencies without judgment. It's a one big giant play, and life becomes one giant play, not to be feared, but it's now an adventure. So the outlook of fear-based thinking begins to become very optimistic and positive, and you see all this potential and possibilities now. I realize we live in this world which is collapsing on a certain level. I was at the post office today, and I was talking to one of the guys, and they said, the line's so big, how come? And he's like, well, we're cutting staff and this and that, and he goes to me, well, we're shutting down 20 post offices in the metropolitan area, literally because there's no business. That's how much business is contracted. And I was like, that's kind of amazing, because my business is not contracted, it's actually expanded. And I think that simply is just a function of remaining and being in high energy states consistently enough that you see opportunities in places that no one else can see because they're in a state of fear. And when you live in a state of fear, the world is contracting and shrinking. And when you move into higher states of consciousness, anything is possible. it's not really contingent on other people